My parents took my savings to help the family. They panicked when the bank called me. Growing up, I learned very quickly that money was a taboo subject in my household. My parents were the type of people who bought brand new cars every 2 years but struggled to pay the electricity bill on time. They lived entirely for appearances. Before we continue, please subscribe and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps this powerful, life-changing story reach the world. Desperate to look wealthy and successful to their friends and neighbors. I, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. I wore hand-me-down clothes, packed my own lunch, and started working mowing lawns when I was 12 years old. I saved every single penny I earned because I was terrified of ending up like them. I didn't want the stress of debt collectors calling the house during dinner. By the time I graduated from college, I had a very specific ironclad goal. I wanted to buy my own house. I wanted a place that was mine, a sanctuary where no one could tell me what to do or ask me for money. I worked a demanding job in software sales, lived in a cheap, tiny apartment, and ate instant noodles for dinner. I sacrificed vacations, parties, and new clothes. After 5 years of aggressive saving, I finally hit my magic number. I had exactly $60,000 sitting in my high-yield savings account, ready for a down payment. My relationship with my parents was complicated. They were always asking for small loans that they never paid back. It started with $50 for groceries, then $100 for a car repair. I usually gave in because it was easier than listening to my mother cry about how hard their life was. But I kept the existence of my massive savings account a complete secret. I knew that if they found out I had $60,000, they would feel entitled to it. They would see it as family money, not my money. However, I made one critical, terrible mistake. When I was 16 and opened my very first checking account, my mother co-signed for it because I was a minor. Over the years, I linked that old checking account to my new high-yield savings account for easy transfers. I never thought to remove her name from the original checking profile. I assumed that because she didn't have the passwords to my online banking, my money was safe. I didn't realize that in the eyes of the bank, she was technically still a joint owner on the primary link. It was a loophole that would nearly destroy my entire future. The disaster started on a Tuesday. I had finally found the perfect house. It was a small, charming bungalow with a big backyard, exactly what I had always dreamed of. The seller accepted my offer and I was scheduled to close in 2 weeks. I was ecstatic. I felt like all my years of sacrifice were finally paying off. I called my parents to tell them the good news, thinking they would be happy for me. I'm buying a house. I told them excitedly. I finally have the down payment ready. My mother's reaction was strange. She didn't say, "Congratulations." She went quiet. "Oh," she said, her voice tight. "That's a lot of money, Jason. Are you sure you can afford that? Family is so important, you don't want to tie up all your cash." I brushed it off as her usual anxiety. I didn't realize that I had just given them the signal they had been waiting for. By telling them I had the money ready now, I inadvertently told them that if they wanted to take it, they had to act immediately before I spent it on the house. 2 days later, I sat down at my computer to transfer the earnest money deposit to the title company. I logged into my banking portal, humming a happy tune. I clicked on Savings. The page loaded. My heart stopped. I blinked, sure that it was a glitch. I refreshed the page. The balance still read $0. $60,000. Gone. Vanished. I felt a cold sweat break out over my entire body. I couldn't breathe. I clicked on the transaction history, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. There was a single massive transfer listed for yesterday, internal transfer to joint checking ending in 4402. Then from the checking account, a wire transfer, outgoing wire to our Miller. Our Miller was my younger brother, Ryan. Ryan was the golden child. He was reckless, lazy, and always in debt, yet my parents worshipped the ground he walked on. I stared at the screen, my brain refusing to process the betrayal. My parents had used my mother's old access to the linked checking account to drain my savings and wire it to my brother. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went numb. I immediately picked up my phone and called my parents' house. My father answered on the second ring, sounding strangely cheerful. "Hey son, what's going on? Where is my money?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. There was a pause. "Now Jason, don't get upset," my father said, his tone shifting to a patronizing lecture. "We needed to help Ryan. He was in a really tight spot with his gambling debts and he was going to lose his car. We knew you had that money just sitting there doing nothing. We're a family. We help each other." "You stole $60,000 from me," I said, my voice rising. "You stole my house. We didn't steal it, my mother chimed in from the background. I'm on the account, Jason. It's legal. We just borrowed it. Ryan will pay you back when he gets a big promotion. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Ryan had been unemployed for 6 months. He wasn't paying anyone back. They had taken my life savings to bail out their favorite son, and they didn't even feel guilty about it. You have 24 hours to put it back, I told them. I have to close on my house. If that money isn't back in my account by tomorrow, I don't know what I'll do, but you won't like it. Oh, stop being so dramatic, my father scoffed. You can buy a house next year. Ryan needed this now. Stop being selfish. You have a good job, you can save it up again. He hung up on me. I sat in my empty apartment, staring at the phone. I felt a level of rage I had never experienced before. They truly believed they were entitled to my labor. They thought because I was responsible, I existed to subsidize their bad choices. I realized then that begging them wouldn't work. They didn't respect me. They only respected consequences. I looked at the bank transaction again. My mother had authorized the transfer from the joint checking, but she had not authorized the transfer from my high-yield savings. That savings account was solely in my name. She had likely called the bank, impersonated me, or manipulated a teller into moving the funds from savings to checking so she could access them. I drove to the bank branch immediately. I sat down with the branch manager, a stern woman named Mrs. Higgins. I explained the situation. My mother is on the checking account, I said, but she is not on the savings account. How did the money move from my private savings to the joint checking? Mrs. Higgins looked up the records. Her face went pale. It looks like a telephone transfer was authorized, she said. The caller provided your social security number and passed the security questions. I didn't make that call, I said firmly. My mother must have pretended to be me, or she claimed she had my permission. Mrs. Higgins looked uncomfortable. If she had your personal information, Mr. Miller, it's a civil matter between family members. The bank usually doesn't get involved in domestic disputes. I realized the bank was trying to cover its tracks. They had messed up by letting her move money from a solo account, but they wanted me to just accept it. I want to file a fraud claim, I said. This is identity theft. She impersonated me to access a restricted account. Mrs. Higgins hesitated. If you file a formal fraud claim, Mr. Miller, this becomes a criminal investigation. The bank's security team will get involved. We will pull the audio recordings of the phone call. If it is determined that your mother impersonated you, we are legally required to report it to the authorities. She could face felony charges for bank fraud and wire fraud. She looked at me intently, expecting me to back down. Everyone expects the child to protect the parents. They count on the guilt. They count on the idea that family is everything. I thought about my father hanging up on me. I thought about Ryan gambling away my house down payment. I thought about the 5 years of instant noodles and skipped vacations. File it, I said. Start the investigation. Mrs. Higgins typed on her keyboard. I am freezing the funds at the receiving bank, she said. We might be able to stop the wire to your brother if it hasn't fully cleared the clearinghouse yet. But we need to verify the fraud. As I walked out of the bank, my phone rang. It wasn't my parents. It was a number I didn't recognize. This is the Fraud Prevention Department at First National Bank, a professional voice said. Am I speaking with Jason Miller? Yes, I answered. Mr. Miller, we have flagged a suspicious wire transfer of $60,000 initiated yesterday. We are calling to verify if this transaction was authorized by you. We also have a note here from your local branch regarding a dispute. This was the call. This was the moment of no return. If I said, yes, it's a misunderstanding, the money was gone forever. My parents would win. I would be homeless. If I said no, I was effectively sending the police to my parents' door. The voice on the phone waited. Did you authorize this transfer, Mr. Miller? I took a deep breath. No, I said clearly. I did not. That transfer was fraudulent. The person who initiated it was not me. Thank you, the agent said. We are reversing the wire immediately. We are also locking all accounts associated with this profile pending a full federal investigation. The fallout was instantaneous. Because the wire transfer was marked as fraud, the bank system automatically clawed the money back from Ryan's account. But it did more than that. It froze my parents' accounts too because they were the originators of the wire. They were completely locked out of their money. An hour later, my phone started blowing up. My mother was calling. My father was calling. Ryan was calling. I let it go to voicemail. I drove home, made a sandwich, and sat in silence. I wasn't happy, but I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. They had panicked when the bank called them. I could only imagine the scene. They probably tried to use their debit cards at the grocery store and got declined. They probably called the bank and were told, "This account is under investigation for felony wire fraud." The reality of the real world was finally crashing down on them. They weren't dealing with their pushover son anymore. They were dealing with the federal banking system. Finally, I answered the phone. It was my father. He wasn't smug anymore. He was screaming. "What did you do?" he yelled. "The bank froze everything. They said we're being investigated for fraud. They said they're calling the police. Call them back right now and tell them it was a mistake." "I can't do that," I said calmly. I told them the truth. "I didn't authorize the transfer. You stole the money." "We are your parents," he shrieked. "You are sending your mother to jail over money? You ungrateful little brat." "You stole my life savings," I repeated. "You impersonated me on the phone. That's a crime, Dad. It's not a family squabble. It's a felony." "Ryan needed that money," he cried. "The loan sharks are going to break his legs." "Then maybe Ryan shouldn't have gambled," I said. "That's not my problem. My problem is buying my house. And thanks to the fraud department, I'm getting my money back." The next few days were a blur of legalities. The bank provided the audio recording to the investigators. It was damning. My mother had clearly tried to deepen her voice and claimed to be me, stumbling over the security questions until the teller gave her a hint. It was blatant identity theft. The bank reversed the transaction fully. The $60,000 reappeared in my savings account. I immediately moved it to a different bank, one my parents had never heard of. I removed my mother from the old checking account and closed it permanently. I secured my credit reports and put a lock on my social security number. I was fortifying my life against them. Meanwhile, my parents were in a tailspin. They had to hire a criminal defense lawyer. Ryan lost his car because the money he promised the creditors was yanked back. The family was in ruins and they blamed me for all of it. My aunt, who I was usually close with, called me to mediate. "Jason," she said gently, "I know they were wrong. But they are terrified. Your mother is facing probation or even prison time. Can't you just drop the charges?" "I didn't press charges," I explained. "The bank did. The bank lost money or almost did. The bank was lied to. Once I confirmed it was fraud, the bank became the victim too. It's out of my hands." This was mostly true, but I could have technically refused to cooperate. I chose to cooperate. "They need to learn," I told her. "If I save them now, they'll do it again. They'll steal my identity again. I have to protect myself." My aunt sighed. "You're right," she whispered. "But it's going to tear the family apart." "The family was already torn apart," I said. "They tore it apart when they decided my future mattered less than Ryan's gambling." 2 weeks later, I closed on my house. I signed the papers with a shaking hand, not from fear but from relief. I moved in on a sunny Saturday. I didn't invite my parents. I didn't tell them the address. I blocked their numbers. I heard through the grapevine that my parents took a plea deal. They got 5 years of probation and had to pay a massive fine to the bank. They had to sell their house, the one they were so proud of, to pay the legal fees and Ryan's debts. They were forced to downsize into a small apartment, the very thing they had always looked down on. Ryan had to file for bankruptcy and finally get a job at a warehouse. The golden child had lost his shine. I sat on the back porch of my new home, drinking coffee. The yard was quiet. The grass needed mowing, but I didn't mind. It was my grass. I thought about the guilt my parents tried to weaponize against me. They tried to use family as a shield for theft. They thought I would be too weak to stand up to them. They were wrong. I realized that family isn't about blood, it's about mutual respect. If someone steals from you, lies to you, and gaslights you, they aren't family, they are a liability. The bank call didn't just save my money, it saved my life. It forced me to cut the cord. I was finally free. And as I looked at my bank account, safe and secure, I knew I would never let anyone have that kind of power over me again. Months passed and the silence from my former life was blissful. I focused on fixing up the house. I painted the walls, planted a garden, and adopted a dog named Buster. I was building the life I had always wanted. However, the emotional toll of what happened still lingered. I had nightmares about checking my bank account and seeing zero. I had trouble trusting people. When I started dating a girl named Sarah, I was terrified to talk about finances. I kept everything hidden, afraid that she too would see me as a walking ATM. It took a long time to realize that not everyone is like my parents. Not everyone sees relationships as transactional. One evening, Sarah found a box of old photos I hadn't unpacked. She pulled out a picture of me and Ryan as kids. "Is this your brother?" she asked. "You never talk about him." I took the photo and looked at it. We looked happy. We were playing with water guns. "Yeah," I said. "That's Ryan." "We don't talk anymore." Sarah didn't push. She just held my hand. That night, I told her the whole story. I told her about the theft, the bank call, the investigation. I told her about the guilt I still felt sometimes, wondering if I had been too harsh. Sarah looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You weren't harsh," she said. "You were surviving. You stood up for yourself when no one else would." Her validation meant the world to me. It helped me finally let go of the last shred of guilt. Unexpectedly, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my father. There was no return address, but I recognized the handwriting. I debated throwing it away, but curiosity got the best of me. I opened it. It wasn't an apology. It was a request. "Jason," it read. "We are struggling. The lawyers took everything. Ryan needs help with rent. We know you have the house now. You have plenty of room. It's time to put the past behind us. We are your family. Call us." I stared at the letter. Even after everything, the felony charges, the probation, the loss of their home, they still felt entitled to my space. They hadn't learned a thing. They still saw me as a resource to be exploited. I didn't burn the letter. I didn't call them. I did something more permanent. I went to a lawyer and drafted a formal cease and desist letter. I made it clear that any further contact would be considered harassment and reported to their probation officer. I mailed it via certified post. It was the final nail in the coffin. I was done being the safety net. I was done being the victim. I realized that some bridges need to be burned so that you don't be tempted to cross them again. My parents had chosen their path and I had chosen mine. The holidays approached. For the first time in my life, I wasn't dreading them. I didn't have to buy expensive gifts to prove my love. I didn't have to listen to passive-aggressive comments about my job or my car. I hosted a Friendsgiving at my house. My friends came over with potluck dishes. We laughed, ate too much, and played board games. The house was filled with warmth and genuine laughter. I looked around the table and realized that I had built a new family. A family chosen by love, not obligation. A family that would never steal from me. One afternoon, I ran into an old neighbor from my parents' former neighborhood at the grocery store. She looked surprised to see me. "Jason," she exclaimed. "I heard about everything." She lowered her voice. "Your parents tell everyone that you abandoned them. They say you tricked them and stole their money." I smiled calmly. "They can say whatever they want," I said. "The truth is in the police report." The neighbor nodded slowly. "You know," she said, "nobody really believes them. We all saw how Ryan lived. We all saw how hard you worked. People know." That was a relief I didn't expect. I had assumed everyone viewed me as the villain, but the truth has a way of showing itself. I decided to take my financial security to the next level. I met with a financial advisor to ensure my assets were protected. I set up trusts and wills that explicitly excluded my parents and brother. It felt morbid but necessary. I wanted to make sure that if anything ever happened to me, they wouldn't get a dime. It was the ultimate act of self-preservation. My advisor, a kind man named Mr. Henderson, listened to my story. "You're doing the right thing," he said. "Financial abuse is real abuse. You are breaking the cycle." Breaking the cycle. That phrase stuck with me. I thought about my future children. I vowed that I would never treat them the way my parents treated me. I would never view them as an investment or a retirement plan. I would teach them about money, yes, but I would also teach them about boundaries and respect. I would celebrate their independence, not punish it. My parents' legacy of greed ended with me. My legacy would be one of stability and generosity, but generosity given freely, not taken by force. 5 years later, I paid off my mortgage early. I walked into the bank, the same bank where I had reported the fraud, and handed them the final check. Mrs. Higgins was still there. She recognized me. She smiled. "Congratulations, Mr. Miller," she said. "You did it." "Yes," I said. "I did." I walked out of the bank and looked up at the sky. It was a bright, clear blue. I felt lighter than air. I had reclaimed my life from the jaws of betrayal. I had turned a tragedy into a triumph. I still have the transaction receipt from that day in my safe. The one that says reversal of fraudulent transfer. I keep it not to dwell on the pain but to remind myself of my strength. It reminds me that I am capable of protecting myself. It reminds me that I am worthy of my own hard work. My parents panicked when the bank called, but I didn't. I stood firm. And because I stood firm, I am standing here today in my own home, living my own life, completely and utterly free. The cost was high, but the freedom was priceless.